This record must be changed, now!
Richard, we can't alter official records.
Do it, or the school suffers!
No, I won't compromise my integrity.
You'll regret this!
That woman has no right deciding my son's future, Richard Whitmore snapped, pointing across the conference table. She comes in wearing that old coat and thinks she can judge families like ours. Vanessa gave a cold laugh and pushed Maya Thompson's report back like it was dirty. Maybe she's just bitter because some parents can afford better lives for their children. The room went silent as other parents looked away. Maya did not argue, only resting one steady hand on Ethan's old student file as Principal Caldwell stepped beside her and said, "Enough." Westbridge Preparatory Academy did not look like a school built for children. It looked like a place built to impress their parents. The main entrance rose behind black iron gates and trimmed hedges, with limestone columns polished so bright they caught the morning sun like glass. A bronze seal sat above the doors, engraved with Latin words students could not pronounce and donors loved to repeat. Every car in the circular drive seemed chosen to make a statement. Black SUVs, German sedans, quiet electric cars. Inside, the halls smelled of lemon polish, expensive coffee, and paper. College banners hung from the ceiling in perfect rows. Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, Yale. Beneath them were framed photographs of former students smiling in caps and gowns, each picture placed like proof that the school did not simply educate children, it delivered them. Near the administrative wing, the donor wall stretched across an entire corridor. Gold names lined the dark wood panels. Whitmore Family Foundation appeared twice. Staff already knew where power lived. The parent conference room sat behind frosted glass doors at the end of the hall. It had polished wood floors, leather chairs, a long walnut table, and a silver tray of pastries no student ever touched. The coffee machine in the corner cost more than some teachers made in a month. Along the wall, a screen showed students in blazers, trophies, debate medals, and college letters. Everything in the room said success. Everything also said who was allowed to claim it. By 8:30, the parents had begun to arrive. Men in tailored suits checked watches. Women in cream coats and diamond earrings spoke softly about summer programs, tutors, and admissions consultants. Their voices stayed polite, but their eyes measured everything. Shoes, bags, accents, last names. Maya Thompson entered with a blue folder held against her chest. No one turned fully toward her. A few eyes flicked over her and moved on. She wore a simple navy dress, a faded brown coat, and low black shoes worn at the heels from years of standing in classrooms and walking students through bad days. Her hair was pinned neatly back. Her face carried no decoration except the calm of someone who had learned that being underestimated was not the same as being unseen. Maya taught literature to juniors and seniors. She also served as an academic support advisor, though the title had never come with extra pay or recognition. Students came to her when essays fell apart, when parents expected perfection, when panic attacks hid behind straight-A report cards. She knew which students skipped lunch. She knew which ones smiled too quickly when asked if they were fine. At Westbridge, that knowledge did not appear on brochures. Principal Caldwell stood near the head of the table, adjusting his blazer while greeting Richard and Vanessa Whitmore with the warmth reserved for people whose donations could become buildings. Richard shook his hand without slowing down. Vanessa offered 2 fingers and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Thank you for making time," Caldwell said. Richard glanced around the room. "We assumed this would be handled privately." "It will be," Caldwell said quickly. Maya heard that. Handled. Not discussed. Not understood. Handled. She took the seat halfway down the table, not near the screen. The blue folder rested in front of her. Ethan Whitmore's name was written on the tab in her careful handwriting. Inside were drafts, notes, forms, missed appointment records, and observations collected while everyone else kept admiring the surface of a boy, quietly breaking beneath it. A young math teacher stepped in, saw the Whitmores, then sat farther back than necessary. The school counselor entered with a notepad and gave Maya a small nod. Even that nod was cautious. That was how Westbridge worked. Support was given quietly. Approval was given publicly. Fear sat in every chair without needing an invitation. Vanessa removed her gloves and placed them beside her phone. Her gaze stopped on Maya's coat, then on her shoes. The look lasted less than a second, but it carried the weight of an entire sentence. Maya did not lower her eyes. Outside the conference room, students moved through the hall in navy blazers, laughing beneath banners that promised futures. Inside, the adults prepared to decide what kind of truth was acceptable when a family had enough money to dislike it. Maya opened the blue folder. The room grew quieter. Not because anyone respected her yet, because they were beginning to understand she had brought something they could not buy. Richard Whitmore arrived 10 minutes late and made the room feel as if everyone else had been early. He did not apologize. He stepped through the frosted glass doors in a charcoal suit tailored to the inch, with a watch bright enough to catch the lights. Vanessa followed in a cream coat, her heels clicking softly against the polished wood floor. She carried a white leather handbag in one hand and her phone in the other. Principal Caldwell rose immediately. "Richard, Vanessa, thank you for coming in." Richard gave him a brief handshake. "We made time because this situation has become inconvenient." Caldwell's smile tightened. "Of course, and we appreciate the long relationship your family has had with Westbridge." Vanessa's eyes moved past the counselor, past the young math teacher, and finally to Maya. Her gaze settled on the faded brown coat draped over Maya's chair, then dropped to the worn black shoes beneath the table. The smile that followed was small, not friendly, measured. Richard sat at the head of the table without asking if the seat was available. Vanessa placed her handbag beside him, as if claiming space was the same as earning it. Caldwell remained standing too long, like a waiter waiting for permission to sit. Maya did not move. The blue folder rested closed in front of her. Ethan Whitmore's name was written on the tab. She had opened that folder so many times that the edge of the paper had softened under her fingers. Richard looked at it with irritation. "Let us be clear about what we are here to resolve." No one interrupted him. "My son has maintained a record that places him on a specific track. We have consultants, tutors, admissions advisors, and a family office managing that track." Then suddenly, one teacher's report introduces language that could raise questions. He said one teacher the way another man might say one stain. Caldwell nodded carefully. "We understand your concern." "I do not think you do," Richard replied. "Ethan is not some average student whose future can be experimented with by staff looking to prove a point." The young math teacher looked down at his notepad. Vanessa leaned back. "We are not asking for anything unreasonable. We are asking the school to correct the record before it damages him." Maya lifted her eyes. "Correct it how?" For the first time, Richard looked directly at her. "Remove the negative language. Adjust the grade review. Delete anything that suggests a cognitive issue, emotional instability, or academic weakness. Those words do not belong in his file." "They belong if they are true," Maya said. The silence that followed was sharp. Vanessa gave a quiet laugh. "Truth is a strong word for one classroom opinion." "It is not one opinion," Maya said. "It is based on months of work." Richard's jaw tightened. "Months of unauthorized interference, from what I understand." Caldwell raised a calming hand. "Perhaps we can keep this collaborative." "Collaborative is exactly what we want," Richard said, though his voice made the word sound like a warning. "We have supported this school for years. The Whitmore Family Foundation helped build the STEM wing. We chair the spring gala. We introduced 2 trustees." Everyone in the room understood what he meant. Maya looked at Caldwell. He looked away first. Vanessa placed her phone on the table. "Ethan needs a clean file, a confident recommendation, a transcript that reflects his actual ability, not this strange little narrative about struggle." Maya's hand rested lightly on the blue folder. Inside were drafts Ethan had rewritten after midnight, reading notes he had hidden from his parents, a counseling referral he had begged her not to send home, missed meetings, unanswered emails, a practice essay where he had written, "I am tired of pretending everything is easy." No one else had read that line. Richard tapped 2 fingers against the table. So, Ms. Thompson, can you cooperate, or are we going to have to escalate this? Caldwell turned toward Maya, his expression polished and pleading. Maya, I am sure we can find language that protects Ethan's pathway. Maya looked around the room, at the donor wall visible through the glass, at the leather chairs, at the people waiting for her to turn a frightened child into a perfect product. Then she opened the folder, very slowly. Before anyone changes his record, she said, someone should read it. Maya opened the blue folder, and the small sound of paper shifting seemed louder than it should have been. Richard leaned back as if waiting for a performance he had already decided to dislike. Vanessa crossed one leg over the other, her expression smooth and bored. Principal Caldwell remained at the head of the table, one hand resting near the silver coffee tray, his smile carefully balanced between apology and control. Maya did not rush. She turned the first page and placed it flat on the table. Ethan does not need a cleaner file, she said. He needs the right support. Richard's eyes narrowed. He has support. He has pressure, Maya replied softly. The room stilled. The young math teacher stopped writing. The counselor looked up from her notepad. Caldwell's mouth tightened, but he did not interrupt yet. Vanessa gave a short laugh. That is an interesting accusation. It is not an accusation, Maya said. It is an observation. Richard leaned forward. Miss Thompson, my son has private tutors, admissions consultants, test prep coaches, and every resource available to him. Maya nodded once. Yes, and none of that changes what I have seen in his work. She lifted a marked essay from the folder. The page was covered in Ethan's handwriting, crossed out sentences, margin notes, and a final paragraph that had been rewritten 3 times. Ethan is bright, Maya said. He makes connections other students miss. When we discuss literature, he notices structure, motive, contradiction. He can see what a character is hiding before most students understand what the character is saying. For the first time, Vanessa's expression softened slightly. Then Maya continued. But when the same ideas have to move through dense text, under time pressure, he freezes. He skips lines. He loses place. He reads the same paragraph repeatedly and still cannot hold the meaning long enough to answer. That is not laziness. It is not weakness. And it is not something a polished transcript can fix. Richard's hand closed around the edge of the table. You are not qualified to diagnose my son. I am not diagnosing him, Maya said. I am asking that he be evaluated by someone who is. Vanessa sat forward. You are labeling him. No, Maya said. I am refusing to let him disappear behind a label called perfect. The counselor's pen stopped moving. Outside the frosted glass, a group of students passed through the hall, their voices muted by the thick door. One of them laughed. The sound faded quickly, leaving the room heavier than before. Richard's voice lowered. You understand what words like this can do to a student's record. I understand what hiding them can do to a student's life. Vanessa looked at Caldwell. Are you hearing this? Caldwell cleared his throat. Maya, perhaps we should avoid language that feels overly definitive. Maya turned another page. These are Ethan's reading response logs from September through December. On discussion days, his verbal analysis was consistently strong. On written timed responses, his scores dropped sharply. Here are the dates he requested extra time and then withdrew the request before submitting it. Richard frowned. Withdrew? Maya's voice stayed even. Yes. She did not say that Ethan had whispered, "My dad will think I'm making excuses." She did not say he had sat in the back row one afternoon with his hands shaking over a blank page. She did not say he had asked whether smart people could still feel stupid every time they opened a book. Some truths belong to the child before they belong to the room. Instead, Maya placed another sheet beside the first. This is the library attendance record. Ethan missed 3 lunch periods a week for most of October. He was not with friends. He was at the back table near the reference shelves, reading the same assignments before class, so he would not be embarrassed when called on. Vanessa's face changed, just slightly. Richard noticed and spoke quickly. Lots of serious students study during lunch. They do, Maya said. But serious students do not usually hide the book cover under a notebook when someone walks by. The words landed quietly. That made them worse. Caldwell shifted his weight. We need to be careful not to overinterpret. Maya looked at him then, not angrily, not loudly, just long enough for him to feel the weight of all the times care had been renamed inconvenience in that building. I am being careful, she said. That is why I wrote the report. Richard pushed his chair back an inch. Your report threatens his college future. No, Maya said. His fear threatens it. His silence threatens it. The idea that he must look flawless to be worthy threatens it. Vanessa's smile returned, thinner now. And you believe you know our son better than we do? Maya looked down at the folder. Then she looked back at them. I believe I have listened to what he was afraid to say at home. No one answered. The leather chairs creaked softly. The coffee machine hummed in the corner. Behind Caldwell, the screen still showed smiling students holding college acceptance letters, every face bright, every future polished. Maya closed one hand over Ethan's essay. A child's future is not protected by hiding the truth from him, she said. It is protected by giving him enough help to face it. Richard stared at Maya as if she had forgotten her place, then turned toward the rest of the room. Do you all hear this? He asked, his voice rising beyond the table. A literature teacher is telling us she understands my son's future better than his parents, his advisors, and the people we pay to guide him. No one answered. That was permission enough. Richard straightened his cuff and let his eyes move over Maya's coat again. With respect, Ms. Thompson, there is a difference between caring about students and being qualified to shape the path of a child operating at Ethan's level. Maya remained still. Vanessa tilted her head, her smile softening into something almost sympathetic. I'm sure you are very dedicated, truly. And I imagine for many students, especially students without resources, that kind of attention feels meaningful. The words were wrapped in silk. The insult was not. But Ethan is different, Vanessa continued. His future is not a classroom project. We are talking about selective universities, legacy interviews, leadership programs, networks that require precision. One careless phrase can follow him for years. Maya's hand rested beside Ethan's essay. Richard gave a short laugh. Exactly. This is not about hurt feelings or encouragement. This is about standards. He said standards the way some people say gates. Principal Caldwell shifted near the head of the table. Richard, I understand your frustration, but perhaps we can avoid making this personal. Richard looked at him. It became personal when she inserted herself into our family's planning. The counselor lowered her eyes. A father near the window adjusted his watch and gave a small nod. A woman in a pale blazer looked down at her coffee. The young math teacher stared at his notepad. Maya noticed all of it. The silence, the discomfort, the refusal. Richard leaned forward. Tell me something, Ms. Thompson. How many Ivy League placement meetings have you managed? How many admission strategies have you built? How many scholarship negotiations have you sat through with families like ours? Maya did not answer. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward Maya's shoes again. I don't think she understands what families like ours have to protect. A faint murmur moved through the room. Richard continued, colder now. You teach essays. That is respectable, but let's not pretend it gives you authority over the trajectory of a Whitmore. The name landed heavily. Whitmore. It was on the donor wall, on gala invitations, on the plaque outside the new science wing. It had weight before Richard even opened his mouth. Maya looked through the frosted glass. A shadow stood outside the conference room door. Ethan. He had stopped in the hallway with his backpack hanging from one shoulder, half hidden behind the glass panel. His face was blurred, but Maya knew his posture. Rigid shoulders, chin tucked, one hand gripping the strap too tightly. He was hearing everything. Vanessa did not see him. She leaned forward, lowering her voice as if offering kindness. Maya, some teachers are wonderful for ordinary children. Children who need patience. Children who need someone to believe in them because no one else is building anything bigger around them. The counselor's face tightened. But Ethan is not ordinary, Vanessa said. And frankly, I am not comfortable with someone projecting her own limitations onto my son. The room went very quiet. Even Caldwell looked down. Maya could have answered then. She could have spoken about the nights Ethan stayed in the library until the cleaning staff turned off the lights. She could have described the first time he admitted he read the same page 5 times and still felt lost. She could have said his parents were defending an image, while their son stood outside the door breaking under it. She said none of it. Her eyes stayed on Ethan's shadow. Richard mistook her silence for defeat. "We are asking for a correction," he said. "Not a debate. Remove the language. Adjust the record. Let professionals handle what comes next." Maya closed the folder. The sound was soft. Still, everyone heard it. Then she looked at Richard and Vanessa. "Your son is not a brand," she said. "And he is not safer because everyone in this room is afraid of your last name." Maya's hand stayed on the blue folder. It was not new. The corners were softened from months of being opened, closed, carried, hidden, and carried again. A faint coffee ring marked the lower edge. The tab with Ethan Whitmore's name had been written by hand. Richard looked at it as if the folder itself had offended him. "Open it," he said. Maya did not move. "If you are going to make claims about my son," Richard continued, "then put the evidence on the table. Let everyone see what gives you the right to interfere." Caldwell shifted behind his chair. "Richard, student records are protected." Richard's eyes stayed on Maya. "Convenient." Vanessa gave a soft laugh. "Professional secrecy does become useful when the performance starts falling apart." Maya's thumb pressed against the folder's edge. "There are parts of this file that belong to Ethan," she said, "not to a room full of adults trying to win an argument." Richard's expression hardened. "He is a minor. We are his parents. And he is still a person." The words were quiet, but they landed with enough weight to make the counselor look up. Vanessa leaned back, smiling as if pity had arrived to sit beside her. "That sounds noble, but it looks like you are hiding behind procedure because you cannot defend your own report." For a moment, all the Polish in the room seemed too bright. The donor wall beyond the glass, the silver coffee tray, the expensive pens beside empty notepads, everything designed to make power feel tasteful. Richard reached across the table. Maya's hand closed fully over the blue folder. He stopped before touching it. That small stop said more than anyone intended. He was used to people moving things out of his way. He was not used to being refused by a teacher in worn shoes. Caldwell's voice came carefully. "Maya, perhaps you can share enough to reassure the family, while still respecting privacy. We need to be mindful of the school's image." "The school's image," Maya repeated. "Yes," Caldwell said. "It's responsibility to all stakeholders." Maya looked at the folder, then at him. "Ethan is not a stakeholder." No one answered. She opened the folder only an inch. Not enough for Richard to read. Enough for the room to see what was inside. Several paper tabs divided the file. Intervention plan, reading evaluation, scholarship appeal, parent outreach, draft recommendation. Near the back sat an envelope with no stamp, marked in Maya's handwriting. Not sent. Vanessa's smile thinned. "What is that?" "A letter," Maya said. "To whom?" Maya closed the folder again. "To someone who asked for the truth." Richard let out a sharp breath. "This is ridiculous. It is confidential. It is theatrical. It is a student record. It is an excuse," Vanessa said. "You flash labels and talk about struggle because it lets you sound important in a room where you are out of your depth." The young math teacher looked toward the door. The counselor's jaw tightened. A parent near the window crossed her arms, then lowered them when Richard glanced her way. Fear was moving through the room again, quietly, professionally. Caldwell stepped closer to Maya. "I need you to cooperate." "I am cooperating. You are escalating." "No," Maya said. "I am protecting the child whose file everyone keeps treating like a problem to manage." Richard stood. The chair legs scraped against the polished floor. "Do you understand what you are risking?" he asked. Maya did not look away. "Yes. If that folder contains anything that damages Ethan's record, we will hold the school responsible. And if you inserted yourself beyond your role, we will hold you responsible." Vanessa placed one hand over her handbag. This could have been simple. A correction. A professional courtesy. But some people mistake access to children for authority over families. Maya's fingers rested on the folder's worn cover. Through the glass, Ethan's shadow had not moved. She wanted to open the folder. She wanted to show them the essays, reading logs, and scholarship forms she had started after Ethan whispered that he might never be good enough. She did not, because the first person to deserve Ethan's truth was Ethan. So she slid the blue folder closer to herself and placed both hands over it. The room watched her like she had stolen something. Maya spoke softly. "You can question my judgment," she said. "You can question my credentials. But you do not get to turn his private struggle into a public weapon." For the first time, Richard had no immediate reply. The blue folder sat between them, old, ordinary, and heavier than money. The hallway outside the conference room had gone quiet. At first, Ethan Whitmore was only a shadow behind the frosted glass. Tall, thin in his navy blazer. One strap of his backpack hung from his shoulder. His other hand gripped the folder he carried so tightly that the paper bent beneath his fingers. Then the door opened. No one had called for him. Ethan stepped in as if the room itself had weight. His hair was neatly combed, his tie straight, his shoes polished in the way Westbridge students were trained to appear effortless. But his face did not match the uniform. His eyes were tired. There were shadows beneath them, and when he looked at the adults at the table, he looked less like a child entering a meeting than someone walking into a trial where the verdict had already been written. Vanessa's expression changed first. "Ethan," she said, brightening too quickly. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" Richard turned in his chair, irritation flashing before he smoothed it into control. "You should be in calculus." Ethan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Maya watched him without moving. Her hands stayed folded over the blue folder. She did not smile at him, not because she was cold, but because she knew even kindness could feel like pressure when every eye in the room was waiting. Caldwell cleared his throat. "Ethan, this is an adult conversation." Richard lifted one hand. "No, actually, maybe this is useful." Vanessa reached toward the chair beside her. "Come sit with us." Ethan did not move. Richard looked back at Maya, then at his son. "Tell them, Ethan. Tell Principal Caldwell that Ms. Thompson has been making you uncomfortable with this entire process." The young math teacher's pen stopped. Maya's eyes lowered for half a second. Ethan stood near the door, his backpack still on one shoulder. "Dad," Richard's voice sharpened beneath the polish. "Tell them she is overreacting." Vanessa gave Ethan a small, encouraging nod. "Don't be afraid, honey. Just be honest." The word honest seemed to press against him harder than anything else. Ethan looked at his mother, then at his father. Then his eyes moved to Maya. For a moment, the conference room disappeared around him. He was back at the library table near the reference shelves, a book open in front of him, letters blurring together while his chest tightened. Maya sitting 2 tables away, not watching him too closely, giving him space. He remembered the first essay he had thrown away. He remembered Maya pulling it from the recycling bin, smoothing the paper flat and saying, "This is not failure. This is a draft." Now she said nothing. That was what nearly broke him. Richard leaned forward. Ethan? The boy flinched. It was small, but everyone saw it. Vanessa's smile faltered. Sweetheart? Ethan stared at the floor. I don't know. Richard frowned. You don't know what? I don't know what you want me to say. The silence after that was worse than shouting. Richard sat back slowly. I want you to tell the truth. Ethan's fingers tightened around the bent folder. His face went pale, and his eyes shone with something he was trying hard not to let fall. Maya spoke before anyone else could. Ethan? She said gently. He looked up. You do not have to answer anything before you are ready. The sentence moved through the room like a door opening somewhere far away. Ethan's chin trembled once. He swallowed it down. He looked toward his mother, who seemed suddenly unsure what to do with the boy in front of her. He looked toward Richard, whose authority had filled the room until his son's silence made it look fragile. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered. No one knew who he meant. Maya did not ask. She only nodded once, as if the apology could rest there without being used. Richard's jaw tightened. This is exactly what I mean. She has confused him. But the words did not land the way they had before. Not with Ethan standing there. Not with his perfect uniform and exhausted face. Not with the blue folder on the table and the boy it belonged to, unable to lie for the adults who claimed they were protecting him. Through the glass behind him, students moved beneath banners promising bright futures. Inside the room, Ethan Whitmore stood surrounded by every advantage money could buy, and still, he looked terrified to tell the truth. Principal Caldwell looked at Ethan by the door, then at Richard Whitmore, then at the blue folder under Maya's hands. For one brief moment, he seemed to understand exactly what was happening. Then his eyes moved to the donor wall beyond the glass. The Whitmore Family Foundation name was carved in gold beneath the rendering of the new STEM Center. Caldwell had already posed beside Richard with a ceremonial shovel, smiling as if Westbridge's future had been secured. Now that future sat across from him with a tightened jaw and a threat hidden behind every word. Caldwell straightened his blazer. Ethan, he said carefully, you may return to class. Ethan did not move. Vanessa reached for her son's wrist, but he stepped back before her fingers touched him. The movement was small. It still changed the room. Maya noticed Caldwell notice it. She also noticed him look away. Ms. Thompson, Caldwell said, we need to pause this conversation before it causes further harm. Maya's face stayed calm. Further harm to whom? To the student pathway, Caldwell replied. To parent confidence. To the institutional trust that allows this school to function. Richard leaned back. There it was. The language had changed. Our community depends on professional conduct, Caldwell continued. When a faculty member uses language families perceive as damaging, we must examine the judgment behind it. Maya kept both hands on the folder. My judgment was to document what I observed. And that documentation has created significant concern. Because it is false. Caldwell's mouth tightened. Because it may not support the broader goal. The broader goal is Ethan's welfare. The broader goal, Caldwell said, is protecting Ethan's educational pathway. Maya looked at Ethan. He stood near the door, pale and silent, his backpack strap pressed hard into his shoulder. That pathway is not protected by pretending he is fine, she said. Vanessa let out a tired breath. This is exactly the problem. Richard looked at Caldwell. Principal, I think we have heard enough. Caldwell nodded too quickly. I agree this conversation is no longer productive. The counselor shifted in her chair. Dr. Caldwell, Maya's report aligns with intervention indicators we've discussed before. Caldwell turned toward her with a polite smile that carried a warning. Thank you, Ms. Ruiz. We will review all relevant materials through the appropriate channels. Appropriate channels, Maya knew what it meant. Private rooms, edited summaries, careful minutes, a decision already made before anyone read the evidence. Caldwell folded his hands. Maya, submit a revised report by end of day. remove speculative language regarding cognitive concerns, and offer the Whitmore family a direct apology for the distress caused by this meeting. Ethan's eyes widened. Richard's face relaxed for the first time that morning. Maya sat perfectly still. I can adjust tone. I can clarify sources. I can remove anything that sounds harsher than it needs to. Vanessa's smile returned. But I cannot write a false report. The room went quiet again. Caldwell's expression hardened. The polite administrator was gone. In his place stood a man calculating what one teacher was worth compared to a multi-million-dollar promise. Maya, he said, you are not being asked to lie. Yes, I am. Richard sat forward. Careful. Maya looked at him. I am. Caldwell lowered his voice. You are being asked to behave professionally. I am. You are being asked, Caldwell said, each word sharper now, to recognize that a school of this caliber cannot allow individual staff members to jeopardize institutional reputation because they become emotionally attached to a student. Maya's eyes moved slowly to him. There was no anger in them. That made Caldwell look away first. Across the table, a parent in pearls released a quiet breath of relief, as if the uncomfortable part had finally been handled. Ms. Ruiz pressed her lips together but said nothing. Money did not need to speak anymore. Everyone understood. Caldwell gestured toward the door. I think it would be best for you to step out while we lower the temperature of this conversation. Maya did not stand right away. She looked at Ethan. He looked as if he wanted to say something, but his father's shadow was already over him. Maya closed the blue folder and lifted it from the table. Richard watched it leave the surface. The revised report should remain with the school. Maya held it against her chest. The truth usually does. Then she stood. Her chair made almost no sound. She walked past the leather seats, past the silver coffee tray, past the donor names shining through the glass. As the door closed behind her, Vanessa smiled. And Ethan Whitmore stood in the room his family had bought for him, watching the only adult who had told the truth be removed for saying it. The door to the conference room closed behind Maya with a soft click. Inside, voices continued in polished tones, lower now, easier now, as if the difficult part of the morning had been removed. Outside, Maya stood in the hall with the blue folder held against her chest, listening to the muffled language of adults turning a child into a strategy. She did not cry. She did not look back. She walked past the donor wall, past the smiling college photographs, past the gold letters that made certain families feel permanent. A few students moved aside when they saw her. One whispered her name. Another looked down quickly, the way young people do when they understand something unfair is happening, but have not yet learned what courage costs. By noon, the story had begun to move. Not loudly, not officially. It moved through half-open doors and paused conversations. It moved in the teacher workroom while the copier hummed and someone removed a stack of worksheets without meeting anyone's eyes. They made her leave? One teacher asked. That's what I heard. For the Whitmores. No one needed to answer. In the counseling office, Elena Ruiz sat at her desk with her hands folded over a calendar, full of crossed-out appointments. She stared at one date in November, marked Ethan, essay review, 6:30 p.m. She remembered that evening clearly. The building had been nearly empty. Security lights had already clicked on in the west hallway. Maya had sat beside Ethan in the writing lab, her coat still on because the heat had shut off after school hours. Ethan had been bent over his laptop, deleting the same sentence again and again. Elena had passed the door and heard Maya say, "Don't write what they want to hear. Write what you were afraid to admit." Ethan had not answered for a long time. Then he had started typing. Elena looked toward the conference room now and closed her office door. In the library, Mr. Hahn, the assistant librarian, rolled a cart of returned books past the reference shelves. His eyes stopped on the back table near the window. That had been Ethan's table. For weeks, the boy had sat there during lunch, blazer still buttoned, untouched sandwich beside him, one finger moving under lines of text, like he was afraid the words would escape if he did not hold them down. Sometimes his hand shook, Sometimes he closed the book too quickly when other students walked by. Maya never sat directly beside him. She sat 3 tables away, close enough to help, far enough to let him keep his pride. Mr. Hahn had watched her slide sticky notes across the table without speaking. One said, "Take 1 paragraph at a time." Another said, "You are not behind. You are learning the route." He had kept one of those notes after it fell between the shelves. He still had it in his desk drawer. In the hallway near the art wing, 2 seniors stood by the vending machine, speaking in low voices. "Ms. Thompson got in trouble because of Ethan?" "That's messed up. She helped Jordan pay for his retake fee last year," one of them said. "What?" "Yeah, he was going to miss the exam because his mom couldn't cover it. Ms. Thompson told the office it came from an academic support fund. There is no fund. I know. The bell rang, but neither student moved right away. Little pieces of Maya were scattered through Westbridge like things no plaque would ever record. A ride arranged for a student whose father forgot pickup. A winter coat left anonymously in a locker. A college essay read at midnight. A lunch account quietly paid. A parent email answered after 2 jobs and 4 hours of grading. None of it had a building named after it. None of it made the donor wall. But people remembered. By the end of the day, the silence around Maya had changed. Teachers who had avoided her eyes now watched her walk down the hall with something close to shame. Students grew quiet when she passed. Ms. Ruiz stood in her doorway and gave one small nod. Maya returned it. The blue folder stayed under her arm. Richard and Vanessa still had money. Caldwell still had the title. The official record still belonged to people who knew how to polish a lie until it looked like policy. But beneath that polished surface, something had begun to loosen. The truth had not reached the board yet. It had not reached the cameras. It had not reached the people with power. Not yet. But it had reached the people who had seen Maya stay when no one was watching. And that was where every buried truth begins. Maya's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a brick building 40 minutes from Westbridge. The hallway light outside her door flickered whenever the wind pushed through the old window by the stairs. A radiator hissed somewhere below. From the street, headlights passed across the thin curtains in pale strips, then disappeared. Inside, the apartment was small enough for the kitchen table to serve as everything: dinner table, desk, grading station, counseling office, war room. Maya set the blue folder down beside a chipped mug of coffee she had poured that morning and never finished. The coffee was cold now, a dark ring staining the inside of the cup. Her laptop sat open near the edge of the table, its corners scratched, one key slightly loose from years of late nights and rushed lesson plans. Papers covered nearly every inch of the wood: student essays, recommendation drafts, rubrics, utility bills. A car insurance notice folded beneath a stack of graded journals, a grocery receipt tucked inside a paperback novel. There was no silver coffee tray here, no leather chairs, no donor names carved in gold. Only work. On the wall above the table were things Westbridge would never put in a brochure: thank you cards written in uneven handwriting. A photograph of a former student in a graduation gown, holding up his diploma with both hands. A printed college acceptance email from a girl who had once sworn she was not smart enough to apply. A small sticky note that read, "Miss T, you were right. I did have something to say." Maya stood looking at them for a moment. Then she took off her faded coat and placed it over the back of the chair. The silence of the apartment felt different from the silence in the conference room. There, silence had watched. Here, silence remembered. She opened the laptop and clicked through a folder labeled Ethan W. The screen filled with documents. Personal Essay Draft 1, Personal Essay Draft 2, Personal Essay Draft 3, Reading Observation Notes, Parent Email Follow-Up, Evaluation Referral Request, Scholarship Appeal Letter. Maya rested her fingers on the trackpad but did not open anything right away. The names alone carried months. She remembered Ethan sitting under the library window, trying to explain why he could speak beautifully in class, but lose himself on the page. She remembered him laughing once, embarrassed, When he said his brain felt like it had all the answers locked behind the wrong door, she remembered telling him that a locked door did not mean an empty room. She opened the email thread to Richard and Vanessa Whitmore. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, I would like to discuss additional reading support for Ethan. No reply. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, I am following up on my recommendation for a professional reading evaluation. No reply. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, Ethan has shown strong analytical ability, but I remain concerned that he is masking difficulty through avoidance and over-preparation. No reply. There were 5 messages in total. Unread, perhaps. Ignored, more likely. Maya leaned back in the chair. The old wood creaked beneath her. Outside, someone's dog barked twice, then stopped. She opened the scholarship appeal next. It was not finished. It had never been requested by Richard or Vanessa. They would have considered it unnecessary, maybe insulting. But Ethan had once asked her quietly whether scholarships were only for students who needed money, or if they could also be for students who needed someone to believe they had earned something on their own. So Maya had started the letter. She had written about his mind. Not his last name, not his family's foundation. His mind. Ethan Whitmore demonstrates a rare ability to interpret complexity with honesty and restraint. She scrolled farther. With appropriate support, his reading challenges should not be mistaken for limited potential. Maya stopped at that sentence. The apartment seemed to grow still around it. There was another document at the bottom of the folder, the one she had printed and placed inside the blue file. The letter not sent. She opened it. The cursor blinked at the end of an unfinished paragraph. Ethan is not fragile because he needs help. He is fragile because he has been taught that needing help makes him less valuable. Maya read the line twice. Then she closed her eyes. She could hear Richard's voice again, smooth and cold, talking about pathways, standards, strategy. She could see Vanessa's smile when she said ordinary children. She could see Caldwell looking at the donor wall before choosing the sentence that would protect the money and abandon the child. Maya opened her eyes and kept reading. If Ethan is allowed to receive proper reading support, he will not become smaller. He will become freer. His future should not depend on how convincingly he can hide pain from the people who claim to be building it. The laptop glow lit her face. There was no audience here, no applause, no title, no extra pay. No one from Westbridge knew how many nights she had sat at this table, drafting the careful language that might save a boy from being crushed by the word perfect. Maya reached for the cold coffee, then left it untouched. Instead, she saved the letter. Then she saved it again. On the wall above her, the old thank you cards trembled slightly as the radiator knocked to life. Maya looked at Ethan's blue folder. In the morning, they would ask her again to change the truth. She already knew her answer. Months before the conference room, before the blue folder, before Richard Whitmore turned his son's pain into a public argument, Ethan had almost lost everything in a quieter room. It began with an essay. The assignment was on The Great Gatsby, a personal analysis of illusion, status, and the cost of pretending. Ethan submitted his paper 2 minutes before midnight. The formatting was perfect. The citations looked clean. The first paragraph sounded polished in the way Westbridge rewarded. Too polished. By morning, the plagiarism software had marked nearly half of it. Red lines covered the screen like cuts. The English department gathered in the faculty office before first period. A senior teacher shook his head. Academic dishonesty. No question. Another said, for a student on his track, this has to be documented. He knew better, someone muttered. They always know better. Maya stood behind them, reading the highlighted passages in silence. The copied sections were obvious, but something about the essay felt wrong. Ethan had not stolen a brilliant paper. He had stitched together fragments, summaries, phrases from study sites, and awkward sentences of his own that collapsed halfway through an idea. There was guilt in it, but there was also panic. Maya opened his previous work. His spoken comments in class had been sharp, sometimes startlingly deep. He saw patterns. He understood contradiction, but his written responses had the same break in them every time. Strong first sentence, then drift, missing transitions, repeated phrases, half-finished thoughts, a boy with a clear mind fighting through a fog of text. The others saw cheating. Maya saw drowning. Principal Caldwell wanted a formal discipline notice by lunch. The counselor requested a parent meeting. One teacher said Ethan needed to learn that privilege did not erase consequences. Maya agreed with that part. Consequences mattered, but truth mattered first. That afternoon, after the last bell, she found Ethan in the library. The room was nearly empty, the lights lowered above the long tables, the windows turning dark against the shelves. He sat at the back with his blazer still on and his laptop open but untouched. The flagged essay glowed on the screen. He did not look up when Maya approached. "Ethan," she said softly. His shoulders tightened. "If you came to suspend me, my dad already knows a lawyer," he said, trying to sound bored. His voice failed at the end. Maya pulled out the chair across from him, not beside him. "I came to ask what happened." He gave a bitter little laugh. "You saw what happened. I saw the paper. Then you know." "I know you copied pieces of it," Maya said. "I do not know why." Ethan stared at the table. For a long time, only the library clock answered. Then his fingers curled against the edge of the laptop. "I read it," he whispered. "I swear I read it." Maya waited. "I read the chapters. I watched summaries. I listened to the audiobook twice. I knew what I wanted to say in class. But when I tried to write it, everything just..." He pressed his palm against his forehead. "It all moved. The words, the quotes, the order. I kept rereading the same page and I still couldn't tell what I had read." His voice cracked and he looked away fast. "I'm not stupid," he said. "I know." He looked at her then, startled by how quickly she answered. Maya's face did not soften into pity. That would have made it worse. She simply looked at him like the sentence had never been in doubt. Ethan swallowed hard. "Tests are worse. Timed reading is the worst. I finish half and guess the rest. Then everyone says I'm brilliant because I can talk, so I just keep talking. I talk my way around everything. Do your parents know?" His eyes filled with fear so quickly that Maya understood the answer before he spoke. "No," he whispered. "They can't." "Why?" "Because my dad says pressure proves you belong. My mom says colleges don't reward excuses." He gave a small, broken laugh. "They already built this version of me. If they find out I need help, they'll think I ruined it." Maya sat very still. The lights above the reference shelves hummed softly. Somewhere near the front desk, a cartwheel squeaked. "I should have written my own paper," Ethan said. "I know that." "Yes," Maya replied. His face dropped. "And you are going to," she continued. He looked up. "I am not erasing what you did. You will redo the assignment from the beginning. You will meet me twice a week. You will read smaller sections, write summaries, build your argument, and take a new assessment under proper support. And you will be evaluated." His lips parted. "Evaluated?" "Yes." "Will it go in my file?" "It will help explain what your file has been missing." Ethan looked down at the copied essay on the screen. For the first time, he did not look arrogant or careless or spoiled. He looked exhausted. Maya reached across the table and closed the laptop halfway. "This is not forgiveness," she said. "This is work." A tear slipped down before he could stop it. He wiped it away quickly, ashamed. Maya pretended not to see. That night, long after the library closed, she wrote the first note that would become the blue folder. Richard Whitmore did not wait for the school to finish its review. By 6:40 the next morning, his complaint had reached every board member's inbox. The subject line was clean. Formal concern regarding faculty misconduct and student harm. It sounded measured, almost reasonable. The first paragraph accused Maya Thompson of exceeding her professional authority. The second claimed she had caused Ethan emotional distress through repeated inappropriate intervention. The third warned that her report could materially damage his college prospects, scholarship positioning, and family reputation. Richard had written none of it like an angry parent. He wrote it like a man building a case. At Westbridge, the email moved faster than morning announcements. It reached trustees in their kitchens, donors in town cars, and administrators before they had finished their first coffee. By 7:15, Caldwell was in his office with the door closed, reading the same sentence for the fourth time. Ms. Thompson's conduct raises serious concerns regarding boundary violation, unprofessional advocacy, and inappropriate influence over a minor student. Caldwell rubbed one hand over his mouth. Then another email arrived. This one came from Whitmore and Blackwell, attorneys at law. The letterhead alone seemed to lower the temperature of the room. It requested that Westbridge Preparatory immediately remove Maya Thompson from all academic decisions related to Ethan Whitmore, restrict her access to his records, preserve all communications, and suspend any recommendation letters or academic statements she had prepared without parental approval. At the bottom, beneath the attorney's signature, a single line stood out: "Failure to act promptly may expose the institution to further liability." Caldwell leaned back in his chair. Outside his office window, students crossed the courtyard under banners advertising excellence, integrity, and lifelong learning. Inside, the screen glowed with words designed to make care look dangerous. Across town, Vanessa Whitmore was already working the phones. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She called mothers from the gala committee, fathers from the athletic fund, 2 trustees' wives, and the chair of the Parent Leadership Council. Her tone stayed soft, wounded, controlled. "It is heartbreaking," she said to one parent. "We trusted the school to protect Ethan's future, not allow a controversial teacher to impose her personal agenda." By the third call, the phrase had become sharper. The school must decide whether it values the confidence of families who make this institution possible. By the fifth, it was no longer a concern. It was pressure. A group text began among parents whose names appeared on plaques around campus. Some said they were disturbed. Some said they had heard similar stories, though none could name one. One wrote that Westbridge had become too eager to indulge staff members who did not understand elite expectations. No one mentioned Ethan's face in the conference room. No one mentioned his silence. Money had a way of making absence sound like evidence. In Caldwell's office, the first draft of Maya's disciplinary notice opened on his laptop. He typed slowly at first. "Due to concerns regarding professional boundaries and the appearance of inappropriate influence, you are hereby directed to cease all contact with Ethan Whitmore, pending administrative review." He paused, then kept typing. "You may not access, modify, transmit, discuss, or rely upon any student records, informal notes, draft recommendations, intervention materials, or correspondence relating to Ethan Whitmore without written authorization from administration." The words lined up neatly on the page: boundary violation, unprofessional advocacy, inappropriate influence, potential harm to student pathway. Caldwell read them back and felt the strange comfort official language could provide. It did not make the decision better. It made it easier to sign. When Maya received the notice, she was standing outside her classroom with a stack of graded essays against her hip. A student had just thanked her for comments in the margin. She smiled at him, waited until he walked away, then opened the email on her phone. The hallway sound thinned around her. "Do not contact Ethan Whitmore. Do not access his academic support file. Do not submit or draft recommendation materials on his behalf. Do not discuss the matter with staff, students, parents, or outside parties." At the bottom was Caldwell's name. Above it, the phrase "pending further review." Maya read it once, then again. Her face did not change, but her hand tightened around the essays until the top page bent at the corner. In her classroom, the blue folder sat locked in the bottom drawer of her desk. Beside it was the printed recommendation letter she had not sent, the one that described Ethan as careful, self-perceptive and brave when given permission to stop pretending. The letter had no legal weight, no donor backing, no attorney signature, only truth. Maya opened the drawer and looked at it. For a moment, the room felt like her apartment table at midnight. Quiet, small, full of work no one had paid her to do. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from Caldwell's assistant, requesting that she attend a disciplinary conference at 3:30 and bring no student materials. Maya closed the drawer. The lock clicked. Down the hall, Ethan stood outside the library, watching her from a distance. He looked like he wanted to walk toward her, but two administrators were standing near the office doors, already watching him. Maya saw him. She did not wave. She did not risk making things worse for him. Instead, she placed one hand over her heart for half a second. So small no one else noticed. Ethan did. Then she turned toward her classroom. Behind her, the machinery Richard Whitmore had started continued to move. Emails became policy. Money became concern. Protection became punishment. And somewhere inside a locked drawer, a letter telling the truth about Ethan waited, unsigned, unsent, but not destroyed. The video appeared online at 10:17 that night. No headline, no explanation. Just 42 seconds filmed from behind a half-open door near the conference room hallway. The picture shook slightly at first. A student's hand must have been trembling, or afraid of being caught. Through the narrow angle, Richard Whitmore stood beside the long walnut table, one hand raised, his voice sharp enough for the phone microphone to catch. There is a difference between caring about students and being qualified to shape the path of a child, operating at Ethan's level. Then the camera shifted. Maya sat still at the table in her faded coat, both hands near the blue folder. She did not argue. She did not roll her eyes. She did not defend herself with anger. She simply sat there while Richard's words filled the polished room. The clip cut to Vanessa's quiet laugh. "I'm sure she is very dedicated," Vanessa said, her smile visible even through the grainy image. "For ordinary children, that kind of attention may feel meaningful." Then came the part that made people stop scrolling. Ethan stood outside the door. He was half visible through the glass, his expensive blazer neat, his backpack hanging from one shoulder, his face pale and frozen as his parents spoke about his future, like he was not close enough to hear it. By midnight, the video had been shared hundreds of times. By morning, it had become impossible to contain. Phones lit up across Westbridge before first period. Students watched it under desks. Teachers received it in group chats with no caption, because the silence in the video already said enough. A cafeteria worker saw it during her break and whispered, "That's Ms. Thompson?" A former student posted first, "Ms. Thompson helped me get into college when my own counselor told me to aim lower. That woman deserves better." Then another, "She stayed after school for me every Tuesday for 3 months. No one paid her for that." Then a parent from outside the donor circle wrote, "I do not know the Whitmores, but I know what it looks like when money talks down to a teacher." Comments multiplied. "Protect Maya Thompson." "That boy looks terrified." "Why is the school silent?" This is what happens when donors think they own classrooms. A local education blog picked it up before lunch. "Private school donor family under fire," after viral meeting video. By 2 o'clock, a neighborhood news page had posted a blurred screenshot of Richard pointing across the table, with Maya seated beneath the college banners, calm and alone. Westbridge tried to move as if nothing had happened. It failed. Students glanced toward the administrative wing. Teachers stopped talking when Caldwell passed. In the library, Mr. Hahn watched 3 juniors replay the clip near the reference shelves and did not tell them to put their phones away. Inside Caldwell's office, the calls began. Board members, parents, reporters, the public relations consultant. Caldwell stood behind his desk, one hand gripping his phone, the other smoothing his tie again and again. "We are aware of a video circulating online," he said for the 6th time. "We cannot comment on internal student matters." That afternoon, the Whitmore family released a statement through their attorney. "The video is misleading. selectively edited, and does not reflect the full context of a confidential educational meeting. The Whitmore family remains concerned that a faculty member under professional review has encouraged an inappropriate public narrative involving a minor student. Richard approved every word. Vanessa suggested the next sentence. Ms. Thompson's conduct appears to reflect personal resentment following administrative correction. The statement landed online like gasoline. Some believed it. Some wanted to. A few wealthy parents began posting careful comments about confidentiality, teacher boundaries, and protecting families from public shaming. One wrote, "Schools must be allowed to maintain standards without mob pressure." But under every defense, more voices appeared. Former students, ordinary parents, teachers from other schools, people who had never heard of Westbridge until that morning, but recognized the old pattern immediately. A rich family complains. A school panics. A teacher gets punished for caring too loudly. By evening, Westbridge posted its own statement. Westbridge Preparatory Academy is committed to the dignity of every student and family. We are conducting an internal review consistent with our policies and values. It said nothing. That was the problem. Maya read the statement from her apartment table, the blue folder beside her laptop, Ethan's unsent recommendation still open on the screen. She did not smile when she saw strangers defending her. She did not celebrate. Because across town, Ethan Whitmore was still trapped inside the story everyone was now watching. And the truth, once it escaped the school gates, had become too loud for Westbridge to bury quietly. The deadline was 48 hours away. It sat at the top of Elena Ruiz's screen in red letters, blinking with the quiet cruelty of a clock no parent could donate away. Supplemental materials due Friday at 5 p.m. Elena sat in the counseling office before sunrise, a paper cup of coffee cooling beside her keyboard. The school was silent, except for the wall clock above the filing cabinet. Each second pushed Ethan Whitmore closer to an edge no one in the conference room had wanted to see. The application was not for ordinary admission. It was for the Hawthorne Scholars Bridge Program, a scholarship track for students whose records showed promise and documented obstacles. It did not reward perfection. It rewarded evidence of growth. It required three things Westbridge now had locked behind administrative caution: Maya's recommendation, Ethan's revised personal essay, and a formal academic support plan. Elena clicked the upload portal again. Access denied. She tried the internal file folder. Restricted by administrator. She searched Ethan's support notes. Permission suspended pending review. The words appeared politely on the screen, but they might as well have been chains. By 8:30, Richard and Vanessa were in Caldwell's office again. Richard had not come to ask questions. He had come to give instructions. "If a recommendation is needed," he said, "have Dr. Markham write it. He teaches advanced economics. He has a better title, and no controversy attached." Vanessa nodded. "Or one of the trustees. Ethan does not need a dramatic letter from Ms. Thompson." Elena stood near the window, holding the requirements. The program asks for insight from the educator who oversaw the intervention. Richard waved one hand. "Then write that Dr. Markham oversaw it." He did not. "Then have someone summarize the details." "The relevant details are Maya's," Elena said. The room tightened. Elena did not look away. The essay Ethan rewrote with her is the centerpiece. The support plan came from her observations. The recommendation matters because she can explain the difference between a student hiding difficulty and a student confronting it. Richard's face hardened. This is exactly the mythology she created. "No," Elena said. "It is the strongest application he has." Vanessa blinked. "His grades are the strongest application." "Not for this program." Richard let out a dry laugh. "Are you telling me my son's best chance is to advertise weakness?" Elena's fingers tightened around the paper. "I am telling you his best chance is honesty." Outside Caldwell's office, Ethan had stopped in the hallway. He had come to ask whether he could still submit the essay. He had not meant to listen, but the door was not fully closed, and Elena's words slipped through the gap like something forbidden. "His best chance is honesty." Ethan stood frozen. Inside, Richard's voice dropped. I am done allowing this school to feed my son the idea that struggle is an identity. Elena answered more quietly. It is not an identity. It is context. Caldwell moved behind his desk. We can request an extension. The portal does not grant extensions for incomplete school materials, Elena said. The deadline is final. The clock ticked. In Maya's classroom, her computer sat dark. The recommendation was unsent. Ethan's essay draft remained in a system folder she could no longer open. The support plan waited behind a permission wall created to protect a family from embarrassment. And now that wall was blocking the one path that might still help Ethan. Richard looked at Caldwell. Send the polished version, transcript, activities, leadership summary, Markham recommendation, no intervention language. Elena looked toward the door. She saw the edge of Ethan's blazer. So did Vanessa. Ethan, she said, her voice instantly softening. Sweetheart, this is being handled. Ethan stepped into view. He looked from his mother to his father, then to Elena. His face had gone pale, but his eyes were different now. Not confident, not brave yet. Awake. What did Ms. Thompson write? He asked. Richard stood. That is not important. It is if they need it. They need a clean file, Richard said. Elena's voice came gently from the window. No, Ethan. They need the real one. The words landed between father and son. For the first time, Ethan understood what was being taken from him. Not an accusation, not a punishment. A chance. His rewritten essay. The support plan. The letter from the only teacher who had seen the truth and still believed he had a future. Friday at 5 was coming. Everyone could hear it now. After the building emptied, Elena Ruiz stayed in the counseling office with only the desk lamp on. The rest of Westbridge had gone dark in clean layers. First the classrooms, then the library, then the administrative wing. Outside Elena's door, the hallway lights buzzed above student photographs. Inside, her office looked smaller than usual. A stack of college brochures leaned against a plant that needed water. A clock ticked above the filing cabinet. On her computer screen, the viral video remained paused on Maya's face. Still, silent, alone. Elena watched that frozen frame. Then she reached for her keys. The bottom drawer of her filing cabinet had a stiff lock that always caught halfway. She turned the key once, then again, and pulled. The metal scraped loudly in the quiet room. She stopped and looked toward the door, as if the school itself might have heard her. No one came. She removed a gray folder first, then a yellow one, then photocopies clipped with a bent black binder clip. Ethan Whitmore. The name appeared on more papers than Caldwell had admitted existed. Intervention notes, canceled appointment logs, reading evaluation summary, parent outreach record, internal concern memo. Elena placed them across her desk, one by one, like evidence in a room where no judge had yet agreed to listen. The first email was from Maya in September. Ethan's verbal analysis remains strong, but his written performance suggests a possible reading processing concern. I recommend a formal evaluation and parent meeting. Caldwell's reply was printed below it. Let us be cautious with language until the family is receptive. The next record showed a meeting request sent to Richard and Vanessa Whitmore. Canceled by parent. Another. Canceled by parent. Another. No response. Elena touched the page with 2 fingers. She remembered each cancellation. Richard's assistant calling instead of Richard. Vanessa saying the week was too full. Caldwell asking Elena to soften the urgency because the family was under pressure from admissions season. Under pressure, as if Ethan had not been the one unable to breathe. There was a note from October written in Maya's hand. Student reports slow reading, repeated loss of place, anxiety during timed assessments. Student requests confidentiality. Strongly recommend initial screening. Elena turned to the receipt behind it. $40, Community Learning Clinic, paid in cash, no insurance listed. Elena closed her eyes. Maya had never submitted it for reimbursement. She had paid for the first screening herself because Ethan feared an invoice would go home and turn his struggle into another family crisis. The old printer beside Elena's desk clicked awake. She fed the pages into the scanner. One by one, the machine pulled in the records with a low, grinding sound. The light moved beneath the glass. Intervention notes became digital files. Canceled meetings became timestamps. Soft warnings became proof. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from another counselor appeared. "Be careful. They are looking for who is talking." Elena stared at the message. She had worked at Westbridge for 17 years. She had a mortgage, a daughter in college, a retirement plan that looked stable only if she did not become inconvenient. She knew how Westbridge punished people without ever calling it punishment. Reassigned duties, removed committees, frozen raises. She looked back at Maya's face on the paused video, then at Ethan's file, then at the sentence Caldwell had buried under polished caution. "Let us be cautious with language until the family is receptive." Elena whispered to the empty office. He was the student, not the donor. Her voice sounded strange in the dark. She gathered the copies and placed them into a plain envelope. No logo, no school seal, just paper carrying what everyone had tried to make disappear. At the bottom of the stack, she found one final note from Maya. "If we wait until Ethan collapses publicly, the adults will call it sudden. It is not sudden. We are watching it happen." Elena read it once, then she read it again. The clock above the cabinet ticked towards 7. She opened a new email addressed to the board review committee. Her fingers shook when she attached the files, but she did not stop. In the subject line, she typed 4 words: records regarding Ethan Whitmore. For a long moment, she sat with the cursor blinking beside the send button. Fear stayed in the room with her. So did the truth. Elena pressed send. The emergency board meeting was called for 9 o'clock the next morning. By 8:30, Westbridge no longer felt like a school. News vans waited beyond the black iron gates. 2 reporters stood near the front steps, speaking into microphones while camera operators filmed the bronze seal above the doors. Students gathered along the staircase in small groups, phones in their hands, pretending not to stare toward the boardroom wing. Teachers moved through the hallways with lowered voices and tight faces. The building had spent years teaching everyone how to look polished. That morning, nothing looked calm. Inside the boardroom, the long table shone beneath recessed lights. Framed portraits of former board chairs lined the walls. A glass case held awards for leadership, excellence, and character. At the far end, the Westbridge mission statement was engraved beside the school crest: integrity through truth. Maya Thompson read the words when she entered. She did not smile. She wore a dark skirt, a white blouse, and the same brown coat, brushed clean but still worn at the cuffs. In one hand, she carried a plain folder of copies Elena had helped preserve before the system locks closed around everything. No gold nameplate, no attorney, no family foundation behind her. Only paper, only memory, only the truth people had tried to make disappear. A few teachers waiting near the wall went quiet when she walked in. One gave a small nod. Another looked away, ashamed that he had not done more sooner. Elena Ruiz stood near the side chairs, hands folded tightly around her own folder, her face pale but steady. Maya sat alone. Then Richard and Vanessa arrived. Their lawyer entered first, a narrow man in a navy suit carrying a leather briefcase. Richard followed with the controlled confidence of someone who believed rooms were arranged for him before he entered. Vanessa wore gray silk and pearls, her expression composed enough to look wounded on camera if needed. Richard glanced at Maya, then at the teachers along the wall. His smile thinned. There were more of them than he expected. At the back of the room, 3 students stood near the open door, stopped by a secretary who did not quite know whether to send them away. Beyond them, more students gathered in the hall. No one spoke loudly. The quiet was worse. Richard leaned toward Caldwell. This should not be public. Caldwell adjusted the papers in front of him. The meeting itself is closed. The attention outside is not something we can fully control. You should have controlled it before it reached this point, Richard said. Caldwell swallowed. On the table before him sat the report he had prepared. Its pages were clipped neatly, every paragraph written in the language of administrative distance, faculty boundary concerns, inappropriate emotional involvement, unapproved advocacy, potential influence on student narrative. He had built a version of Maya made entirely from policy phrases, a teacher who cared too much, a staff member who crossed lines, a risk to institutional neutrality. It looked clean. That was the point. Board members entered one by one. Some avoided Maya's eyes. Some looked toward Richard first. One older trustee paused when she saw Elena's folder, and then sat down without removing her coat. The chairwoman, Patricia Voss, called the meeting to order. This is an emergency review regarding the matter involving Ethan Whitmore, Ms. Maya Thompson, and the school's handling of recent events. The lawyer opened his briefcase. Richard sat straighter. Vanessa placed one hand over her son's empty chair. Then Ethan walked in. The room shifted. He stood at the doorway in his uniform, pale, tired, but present. His backpack was gone. In his hands was a folded copy of his rewritten essay. Vanessa's face tightened. "Ethan, sweetheart, you should not be here." Richard's voice was lower. "Wait outside." Ethan did not move. The chairwoman looked over her glasses. "Ethan, do you wish to be present for the portion concerning your record?" Richard began. "He is a minor, and I want to stay," Ethan said. His voice was not loud. It still reached every corner. Maya looked down at her folder, giving him space even now. That made Richard's jaw tighten. Caldwell cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should begin with the administrative summary." He rose and lifted his report. Outside the boardroom, a camera light flashed through the narrow window in the door. Students pressed closer along the hallway. Somewhere beyond the walls, the story that had started with one teacher being told to leave a meeting had become too large to fit back inside Westbridge's polished language. Caldwell looked at Maya, then at Richard, then at the board. And for the first time since the video went public, his voice did not sound certain. Caldwell had only read 3 sentences before Ethan stood. The chair scraped softly against the polished floor. Every head turned. For a moment, he looked like the kind of student Westbridge loved to display on brochures. Navy blazer, straight tie, clean shoes, a last name donors recognized. But his hands were shaking around the folded essay, and his face had gone white beneath the boardroom lights. Richard turned sharply. "Ethan, sit down." Vanessa reached for him. "Sweetheart, this is not necessary." Ethan did not sit. His eyes moved across the table, past the lawyer, past Caldwell's clipped report, past the board members watching him with cautious attention. Then he looked at Maya. She did not nod for him to speak. She did not ask him to defend her. She only looked back with the same calm expression she had given him in the library, when his paper was ruined and his future felt like something already closing. Ethan swallowed. "Ms. Thompson did not hurt me," he said. His voice shook badly. Richard stood halfway. "This is not appropriate." Patricia Voss lifted one hand. "Mr. Whitmore, let him speak." "He is under pressure," Richard said. "This is exactly what we are concerned about." Ethan looked down at the essay in his hands. "I have been under pressure for years." The room went still. Vanessa's fingers tightened against the edge of the table. Ethan took one breath, then another. "I cheated on an essay, not because I didn't care, not because I thought rules didn't apply to me. I did it because I couldn't make the words come out right, and I was terrified that if anyone found out, everything people said about me would stop being true." Richard's jaw tightened. "Ethan." "No," Ethan said. It was the first time he had ever said that word to his father in a room full of adults. The sound changed him. "I read slowly," he continued. "I lose my place. Timed exams make me panic. Sometimes I understand everything in class. Then I open the test and it feels like my brain disappears. I used to stay up all night trying to read ahead so no one would notice. No one moved. Outside the boardroom door, the hallway had gone silent too. I thought about leaving Westbridge, Ethan said. Not because I hated school, because I hated being the version of myself everyone kept congratulating. I thought if I failed publicly, maybe I would not have to pretend anymore. Vanessa's face broke open slightly. Not fully, just enough for the first real fear to show. "Why didn't you tell us?" she whispered. Ethan looked at her. For a second, he was not angry. That made the answer worse. "Because you were always proudest when I needed the least." Vanessa lowered her eyes. Richard stepped forward. "This is manipulation. He has clearly been coached." Maya's face remained still, but Elena's head snapped toward him. The chairwoman's voice cut through the room. "Mr. Whitmore, sit down." Richard stared at her, stunned. She did not blink. "Your son is speaking." Slowly, Richard sat. Ethan's hands trembled harder now, but his voice steadied. "Ms. Thompson did not give me an excuse. She made me redo the work. She made me read the chapters again. She made me write the essay again. She made me apologize for cheating, not hide behind stress or my last name." He unfolded the paper. "This is the essay I rewrote. It is not perfect. Some sentences are still awkward. It took me weeks, but it is mine." Maya looked down then, only for a second. "She also told me I was not stupid," Ethan said. "And I know that sounds small, but when you spend years being called brilliant while secretly feeling broken, one adult saying that, and meaning it can keep you here." The words hung in this boardroom. No policy phrase could touch them. Ethan turned toward Richard and Vanessa. His face was wet now, though he did not wipe it. "You said she lowered my future," he said. "She didn't." He looked back at Maya. "She did not lower my future. She gave it back to me." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything the adults had refused to hear. The silence after Ethan's words cracked slowly, first in Vanessa's face, where the polished calm failed around her mouth, then in Caldwell's hands, where the report he had prepared began to bend under his grip, then in Richard's eyes, where anger replaced certainty. Patricia Voss looked toward Elena Ruiz. "Ms. Ruiz," she said, "you indicated there were records the board had not yet reviewed." Elena stood. Her chair made a small sound against the floor. In the hallway beyond the closed door, cameras waited. Inside, the room watched a woman who had spent 17 years keeping other people's children from falling through the cracks. She placed a gray folder on the table, then a yellow one, then Maya's copies. The paper spread across the polished wood like a truth no one could push back into a drawer. "This is the first email," Elena said. "Maya Thompson to Principal Caldwell, September 12th. Concern regarding Ethan Whitmore's reading performance and written assessment gap. Recommendation for formal evaluation and parent meeting." Caldwell looked down. Elena placed another page beside it. "Here is Dr. Caldwell's response." The chairwoman read aloud. "Let us be cautious with language until the family is receptive." The room tightened. Elena added a meeting log. "Parent meeting requested September 15th, canceled by Mr. Whitmore's assistant. Second request, September 28th, no response. Third request, October 9th, declined due to admission season." Vanessa stared at the pages as if they belonged to another family. Richard leaned forward. "Those were scheduling matters. This is private family business." A woman near the end of the table cleared her throat. She had introduced herself as Angela Reed, an attorney invited by the board to advise on student support obligations. She wore no outrage. That made her voice more dangerous. "If the school had noticed that a student needed academic support," she said, "and chose not to act because of donor concerns, that is not merely family business. A school cannot suppress the record, punish the educator who documented it, and then claim it was protecting the student." No one spoke. Elena opened the yellow folder. These are Ethan's reading evaluation notes from the community clinic. Preliminary indicators for reading processing difficulty. Recommendation for full assessment. She placed a receipt beside it. Paid in cash by Maya Thompson. Vanessa looked up sharply. Maya's eyes lowered. Elena's voice softened, but did not weaken. Ethan was afraid an invoice would be sent home. Richard turned toward his son. You never told us. Ethan looked at the table. That was the point. Elena continued. She laid out Ethan's rewritten essay draft, marked with Maya's comments, not answers, questions, arrows, notes in the margin. What do you actually mean here? Where did this fear begin? Do not polish the sentence until it tells the truth. Beside it went the scholarship recommendation Maya had not been allowed to send, then the support plan, then the draft academic statement showing Ethan's progress from copied work to honest revision. Each document removed one layer of the story the Whitmores had paid to protect. Then Angela turned to Caldwell. Do you have the internal emails referenced in the packet? Caldwell's face went pale. I believe those require context. Patricia opened her tablet. We have them. The screen at the end of the boardroom lit up. An email appeared, sent by Caldwell to the development office 2 days before Maya was ordered to revise her report. Subject line, Whitmore donor sensitivity. Patricia read the highlighted line. We cannot allow a staff report to jeopardize the STEM Center commitment. Please coordinate messaging around student pathway protection rather than formal intervention. Richard's eyes cut toward Caldwell. For the first time, they were not allies. Angela folded her hands. That email suggests the donor relationship influenced the handling of a student support issue. Richard stood. This is outrageous. You are dragging my family through a public spectacle based on private correspondence and one teacher's obsession. Elena picked up the final page. No, she said quietly. We are reading what you ignored. She slid the page toward Vanessa. It was one of Maya's unanswered emails. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, Ethan is working hard to hide a struggle that deserves support, not shame. I am requesting a meeting before this becomes a crisis. Vanessa stared. Her smile was gone. Inside, the documents lay across the boardroom table, plain, dated, undeniable. For weeks, Richard had controlled the room with money. Caldwell had controlled it with policy. Vanessa had controlled it with poise. But paper had a kind of power. It did not flatter. It did not apologize. It remembered. Richard Whitmore reached for the oldest weapon, his name. He stood beside the boardroom table, pointing toward the papers spread across the polished wood, the same papers that had turned his certainty into something brittle. Let us remember what this family has done, he said. The STEM Center exists because of our commitment. The Scholarship Gala exists because of our introductions. This institution has benefited from the Whitmore name for years. Once that sentence would have changed the air. People would have looked down. Caldwell would have softened. Someone would have found language that protected Richard's pride and called it balance. This time, no one moved. Outside the boardroom door, students stood pressed together in the hall, silent enough to hear every raised voice. Teachers waited near the wall. Elena remained beside the evidence folders. Maya sat with her hands folded, neither pleased nor afraid. Richard noticed. His voice sharpened. You are allowing a viral mob to dictate the governance of a private school. Patricia Voss looked at him over her glasses. No, Mr. Whitmore. We are allowing records to dictate our responsibility. His lawyer shifted slightly but did not speak. That silence cost Richard more than an argument would have. He turned to the man. Say something. The attorney glanced at the email on the screen, the receipt, the canceled meeting logs, the donor sensitivity message. His mouth opened, then closed again. There are concerns, he said carefully, that the family may wish to address privately. Privately. The word fell flat. A board member at the far end of the table, Harold Kim, folded his hands. He had not spoken all morning. His name was also on the donor wall, but his voice carried none of Richard's performance. "From this moment forward," he said, "all donor commitments will be separated from academic decisions, support plans, disciplinary matters, and faculty evaluations. No gift will influence the handling of a student record." Caldwell's face drained. Richard stared at him. "You cannot be serious." Harold did not look away. "We should have been serious sooner." The words landed like a gavel. For the first time, Richard stood in a room that did not bend toward him. Vanessa pushed her chair back slowly. Her eyes were no longer on the board, or the lawyer, or the documents. They were on Ethan. "Ethan," she whispered. He stood near the side of the room, his rewritten essay in his hands. His shoulders were tense, but he was no longer hiding behind them. Vanessa stepped toward him with both hands lifted, not elegant now, not composed, just a mother reaching too late for a child breaking in plain sight. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know." Ethan's face twisted. He took half a step back. Not far. Enough. The movement stopped her harder than if he had shouted. Vanessa lowered her hands. Her eyes filled, but she did not try again. For the first time that morning, she understood that pain could not be embraced away before it was heard. Richard saw it. His son stepping back. His wife silent. His lawyer useless. Caldwell exposed. The board no longer afraid. Every piece of power he had brought into the room was leaving him one by one. He turned toward Maya. For a moment, contempt returned to his face by habit. Then he saw the brown coat, the folder, the same steady calm he had mistaken for weakness. His jaw worked once. "Ms. Thompson," he said, the words stiff and bitter, "if any of this caused unnecessary difficulty, then I regret that." The room heard what it was. Not an apology. A retreat dressed in expensive language. Maya did not rise. She did not expose him further. She did not repeat his insults back to him. She had reason to be cruel, and chose not to use it. Instead, she looked at Richard, then at Vanessa, then at Ethan. "Your son does not need you to win every room for him," she said. "He needs you to see him in the room." No one answered. Richard lowered his eyes first. Outside the boardroom, the hallway remained silent. Not empty, not passive, witnessing. And inside, surrounded by plaques, portraits, donors, and documents, the Whitmores understood that money could buy a building, but it could not command the truth once the truth had witnesses. The boardroom did not empty all at once. People stood slowly, as if the weight of what had been said still held them in place. The papers remained spread across the table. The canceled meetings, the unanswered emails, the clinic receipt, Ethan's essay, Maya's recommendation. Patricia Voss removed her glasses and looked at Caldwell. "The disciplinary action against Ms. Thompson is rescinded immediately," she said. Caldwell's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Patricia continued. "The board will open an internal investigation into administrative handling of student support cases, donor influence in academic decisions, and the suppression of intervention records." The phrase donor influence moved through the room like a blade sliding free. Caldwell looked smaller behind the polished table. Not punished in full, not yet, but no longer protected by the language he had used to protect himself. Maya sat still. She did not smile. Outside the boardroom, the hallway stirred as the decision passed from whisper to whisper. Students looked at one another. Teachers breathed out. A camera flashed near the glass doors. Patricia turned back to Maya. "Ms. Thompson, this school failed to recognize the work you are already doing. We would like to discuss creating a formal student learning support program, with you helping lead it." For the first time, Maya looked surprised, then careful. "A program for whom?" she asked. Patricia paused. Maya's voice stayed quiet. "For students whose parents know how to ask? For students with last names the board recognizes? Or for every child hiding because help looked too expensive, too embarrassing, or too dangerous?" Harold Kim nodded once. For every student. Maya looked at Elena, then at Ethan. Then I will help, she said. But it cannot be a brochure. It has to be a door. The sentence settled over the room with more force than any speech. By noon, the files were no longer trapped in the school system. Elena sat in the counseling office beside Maya while the scholarship portal opened on the screen. The old printer hummed behind them. Ethan stood near the desk, holding his rewritten essay, no longer folded, no longer hidden. The upload list appeared. Academic support plan. Submitted. Student essay. Submitted. Faculty recommendation. Maya hesitated before attaching her letter, not because she doubted it, because the document carried the months no one had seen, the library nights, the failed draft, the first honest sentence, the frightened boy who thought needing help meant losing value. She clicked submit. The screen refreshed. Complete. Ethan stared at the word as if it were something physical. He whispered, "Thank you." Maya looked at him. Now the work continues. For the first time in days, Ethan almost smiled. I know. Down the hall, Marcus Bell stood outside the security office with his hands in his jacket pockets. He was the evening hall monitor who had noticed the student recording outside the conference room and chosen not to report it. Later, he gave a statement confirming Ethan had been near the door before anyone claimed the video was misleading. For that, Caldwell had quietly removed him from the front hall schedule. By afternoon, the board reversed that too. No retaliation, Patricia told him, against staff, students, or anyone who preserved evidence. Marcus nodded, embarrassed by the attention. I just didn't think the kid should be erased. No one laughed. Everyone understood exactly what he meant. Richard and Vanessa left through a side corridor, away from the reporters. Richard's phone kept buzzing with calls he did not answer. Vanessa walked beside Ethan but did not reach for him this time. She only said, "When you are ready, I would like to hear the whole story." Ethan looked at her. Then he nodded. It was not forgiveness. It was the first honest beginning they had ever had. The next week, Ethan sat in a smaller classroom near the library with 3 other students and a reading specialist. His blazer hung over the back of his chair. A timer sat on the table, but this time it was not there to punish him. It was there to help him learn the shape of his own pace. Maya stood at the front of her literature class again. The same brown coat hung by the door. The same worn shoes stood beneath her desk. But the room felt different when she opened her book. Westbridge had not become fair overnight. Systems did not change because one meeting ended well. They changed when someone forced the truth into the record. Maya looked at her students. "Open to chapter 9, she said. Pages turned, and somewhere down the hall, Ethan Whitmore began learning without pretending to be perfect. Weeks later, the conference room looked different. The same walnut table stood under the same soft lights. The same leather chairs lined the walls. The same frosted glass door held the reflection of the donor corridor beyond it. But the air no longer belonged to the people who spoke the loudest. On one chair near the front sat 2 pieces of paper. The first was Ethan Whitmore's acceptance letter to the Hawthorne Scholars Bridge Program. The second was a thank you card, written by hand. Ms. Thompson, thank you for seeing me before I knew how to see myself. Maya stood beside the table and looked at them for a long moment. She still wore the brown coat. The cuffs were still worn. The fabric still showed the years. Nothing about it had become expensive, polished, or new. But the room could not look at that coat the same way anymore. It was no longer an object for Vanessa's quiet laugh or Richard's contempt. It was the coat Maya had worn while walking through every insult, without handing them her dignity. Parents filled the room now, not for a disciplinary hearing, for a learning support workshop. Richard and Vanessa sat in the second row, not at the head of the table, not beside the board, not in a place that made others shrink. Richard's hands were folded in his lap. His phone stayed face down. Vanessa held a notebook open, her pen waiting above the page. They were listening. Not perfectly, not easily, but listening. Maya faced the parents with a folder in her hands. Behind her, the screen no longer showed smiling students with perfect futures. It showed a simple line: support is not shame. Ethan entered quietly through the side door. He did not lower his head. He carried a final essay in one hand, the pages clipped together, the margins full of his own revisions. He walked past the chairs, past his parents, past the place where he had once stood, frozen outside the glass. Then he placed the essay on Maya's table. She looked down at the title, The Cost of Pretending. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Maya said, "Is this the final draft?" Ethan gave a small breath that was almost a laugh. "No, but it is the honest one." Maya nodded. That was enough. Vanessa watched her son. Her eyes filled, but she did not reach for him. Richard looked at the essay, then at the acceptance letter, and something in his face softened in a way money had never taught him. The room settled. Maya turned back to the parents. "Education is not about making children look perfect," she said. "It is about helping them become brave enough to be themselves." No one applauded right away. The sentence did not need applause. It needed to be remembered. Outside the conference room, students passed beneath the college banners, laughing, rushing, carrying books and secrets and fears no brochure could hold. Inside, the old coat remained on Maya's shoulders, unchanged and transformed at once. The door that had once closed behind her was open now, and through it, Ethan walked toward a future that finally belonged to him. If this story made you believe that one teacher can change the entire life of a student, like this video, subscribe to the channel and watch the next story on your screen.